Hi everyone, this is Karen from the Historical Society of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. In this video, we're going to be talking about a local landmark in Collegeville, Montgomery County. Now, those of you who live in Collegeville, you probably have already guessed what we're talking about, and that is the Perkiomen Bridge Hotel, which sits right next to the Perkiomen Bridge on Main Street near the intersection of Route 29. Now, originally this building was known as Lane's Hotel, and that was named after Edward Lane, who came to Pennsylvania from England roughly around 1684. He had purchased roughly 2,500 acres of land on both sides of the Perkiomen Creek from William Penn. And roughly around 1708, there were records of him owning a grist mill and what was then known as Lane's Hotel. Some records indicate that his hotel could have been made roughly 1701 to 1706. Some records even indicate it could have been even earlier than that. But they suspect if it was built earlier than that, that part of the building was probably raised or altered in such a way that they can't quite date the building that far back with what's currently standing today. Edward Lane built this hotel in this area because it was right on a major stagecoach route between Philadelphia and Reading. And the hotel received even more business when they finally built the Perkiomen Bridge, roughly around 1799. By that time, records indicate that when the bridge was built, the inn had been operating for about 100 years or so. Again, the records kind of vary as to when exactly it started. When the bridge was built, the hotel started getting the name the Perkiomen Bridge Hotel because it was right next door to it, and more people were coming to it because they could safely get across the Perkiomen Creek. Over the years, in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, there were a lot of additions and changes made to the building itself, between adding a larger kitchen, enclosed porches, more stories, changes to the overall layout of it and whatnot. The inn had changed many times. It eventually became a staple for downtown Collegeville, where people would go to talk about events going in the town, in addition to tourists and people just passing through, staying overnight in the various rooms. By the early 1900s, it became a really popular place for summer vacationers who wanted to use the Perkiomen Creek and also have a place nearby to stay. In the 1940s and 1950s, it was also particularly popular among the Ursinus College students. Ursinus, for those of you who don't know, is right in Collegeville. So it was a popular spot for the students to meet to talk about things going on campus and doing their various projects. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1985. And at one point throughout its history, it was labeled as the longest continuously running hotel in the United States. Naturally, it's no longer the longest running hotel because it is currently not open to the public. The ownership of the hotel has changed many, many times over its nearly 3-century run as a hotel. And most recently, in the 1980s, was when business and its overall condition started to decline. Around 1989, it had been turned into a sports bar and later a restaurant, Unfortunately, those businesses did not last very long, and it shut down in 1993. It reopened as an upscale restaurant in 1997, but again, that business did not last long either, and they eventually shut down. In 2007, the property was once again up for sale, and finally in 2010, it eventually was auctioned off. The current owners currently are not using it for anything. The building is standing idle, and that has led to some history of vandalism and also historic flooding, which has happened the last 2 years. In 2020, we had Storm Isaias come through and flood the building and surrounding neighboring businesses. And most recently, Hurricane Ida came through, and at that point, the Perkiomen Creek reached the highest flood stage it had been on record, and now the building is even further deteriorating from that historic flood. The current fate of the Perkiomen Bridge Hotel remains unknown as of November 2021. In January of this year, there was a $1 million grant given to this site to try to save it. There's a lot of locals who really would love to see this iconic hotel restored to its former glory. That, of course, was right before Hurricane Ida came through during the summer of 2021. So it is now unclear what, if anything, is going to be done to save this structure. There's a lot of people looking at ways to save it. There's been talks of maybe elevating it so it can be safe from future floods. There's also been discussions about moving the whole building to a different area that's away from the floodwaters in Collegeville. And there's also been talks of saving just the oldest parts that date back to the 1700s and getting rid of the more recent additions and moving that older piece of the building to a place that's not going to flood from the Perkiomen Creek. Currently, the building is fenced in to try to keep people out of it because the floodwaters seem to have done a lot of damage to it, and they don't want people going in there. Unfortunately, as of now, we don't know what its fate is going to be. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. However, unfortunately, that designation does not necessarily mean that it will be saved from possible demolition. But we're all hopeful that they will find a way to save this iconic Collegeville site.